takes pleasure in attracting a stellar list of speakers that address today's most relevant issues. The club's place as a refuge for rich discussion and networking has never wavered after 123 seasons.
We are dedicated to encouraging debate on the issues that matter to this city, this province, and this country.
The Canadian Club is one of the most important podiums anywhere in the world that a Canadian can speak to, tell Canadians what it is that they think, develop those thoughts. And so I want to thank you for that very, very much.
Please join me in thanking our esteemed panelists today.
Through our programs and events, including our youth and young leaders programs, our diversity partnerships, our joint events, and our media and social media opportunities, we offer you access to dynamic political, social, and business figures from abroad and right here at home.
The platform from which the eloquence of Canada has flowed all of that time, whether it be business, education, politics, sports, arts, and culture. If someone wants to say something to Canadians about this country and about the future of this country, this is the venue you choose.
Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Anita McCuitt, and I'm the president of the Canadian Club Toronto and national leader of tech, media, telecom, and consumer markets at PwC. 2020 saw leaders across Canada commit to the important work of increasing diversity in their senior leadership ranks and also in their pipeline of up-and-coming talent. But it's one thing to make the commitment. How do we actually make good on the promise of equity, diversity, and inclusion? Well, we know that so much of our success in life starts with our role models. So today, in celebration of Black History Month, we're joined by a group of trailblazing executives who are doing the work to nurture and amplify Black excellence and leadership in business through their own individual careers, their organizations, and their broader collective efforts. Before we dive into today's topic, here's some information about how to participate with us. The click here to switch stream button helps if you find that your internet is slow. The video quality may decrease, but the audio quality should remain strong. And we want your questions. So just click the questions tab, enter your questions in the window, and they'll be sent to our moderator. The Canadian Club is a nonprofit, and we've been gathering people together for over 124 years. And it's because of our sponsors that we can continue to do that. Thank you to the generous sponsorship of TD Bank. Today's event is free of charge, and we're grateful for their support of this discussion. Now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce today's panelists. Nick Chambers is a partner in the social impact practice at Boyden and a past president of Canadian Club Toronto. Dr. Jennifer R. Jackson is president of Capital One Canada. Kikelomo Lawal is Executive Vice President and Chief Legal Officer at CIBC, and Sandra Levy is the Chief People Officer for the Canadian Olympic Committee. Today's discussion will be moderated by Dr. Ivan Joseph, Vice President of Student Affairs for Wilfrid Laurier University. One of the club's traditions that has not changed in this virtual world is the toast we make to our country at the start of every event. So if you have a drink nearby, please join me in a toast to Canada. To Canada. Ivan, I'll turn the Canadian Club podium over to you.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you. And what an honor it is for me to be here. I've been in the audience of the Canadian Club on many times. Never once did I think I would grace its stage, or at least its virtual stage, and be with such esteemed leaders. You'll notice that I didn't say esteemed Black leaders. I don't think their color should define who they are as leaders. These are exceptional men and women that have reached the pinnacle of their careers. Although for some, there's probably another step they still want to go. And so we'll see where that will go. Today, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to have a conversation about what it takes to be a leader, what it takes exactly to be Black in the C-suite, because there's different challenges that come with that. And while some may say today it has been a journey, it's not for each of us to say which way is the right path to get there. Each of them will share their own stories. This is a conversation not coming from a place of anger and finger wagging, but from a conversation of hope and optimism, of aspirations, of sharing what has worked for each of us along our way. I know for one that I am engaged in and just excited to learn. This is an opportunity, so dig in, to get your pens or your pencils. There's going to be nuggets of wisdom shared today. Before we get into the meat, the questions, the good conversation, let's get each of them to share their journey. The things that they say that are said, here's how I got to where I got. All right, so without further ado, Dr. Jackson, would you mind kicking us off?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Excited to be here. My quick intro is I'm an American amongst Canadians, but proud to have lived here for almost 3 years now. I was born and raised in Philadelphia. I lived in an all-Black neighborhood, and when I was around 12, we moved to an all-white neighborhood a couple hours away. And what I didn't know at the time, that would be a good practice for me, both through my educational journey and corporate America and now corporate Canada in terms of being the only, but it was a good experience and one that I learned how to work and deal with all people, because at the heart of it, we all have way more alike than we do differences. I went, and I'm an engineer by training, so I went to undergrad at Yale and then got my PhD at Carnegie Mellon University with the aspirations to become a professor. Fortunately, I learned about myself and I knew that academia was not for me.
Go easy there, go easy.
I like to interact with people in a different way, and I'm much more short-term focused than research reporting. So when I finished, I ended up going to management consulting, took the opportunity to learn about a lot of different functions and industries, and really opened up to realizing we can have a lot of twists and turns in our careers. And so after that, did a short stint at Xerox in corporate strategy, where I spent time in India and Brazil pretty extensively, and then joined Capital One. And my first foray into banking or financial services in another big pivot, but one that I have very much enjoyed. And 2.5 years ago, led to my being appointed the president of our Canadian business, and live here in Toronto and in Yorkville, and excited to be living in Canada, exciting to be part of this conversation.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. We'll give you the virtual applause, right? Maybe it's a little snap there. All right, Nick, take us home. Give us and share with us your journey.
Thanks very much, Ivan, and hello, everybody. So I'll give you the quick version. I'm used to being on the other side of the table asking people about their stories. So it's fun to be on this side. I'm a partner with Boyden Executive Search. We're a global executive search firm and do lots of business in Canada. I think, given the topic of today, it's noteworthy to say that I'm only one of a handful of Black Canadians at the partner level in executive search, and I believe the first in Canada in my firm. We can get back to the question of firsts perhaps later in the conversation. But I also want to highlight my involvement with the Canadian Club, and I'm proud to say that when I did my term as president of the Canadian Club, I was actually at that time the third Black person to serve in that position, and you may know that the incoming chair or president of the Canadian Club is also Black. So that'll make number 4, and in the last few decades, we've had several chairs of the club who are racialized people, and I think we owe that to work that was done in the 80s and 90s by some kick-ass, no-nonsense, take no prisoners, female board members and chairs who said that, yes, this club has a history of literally being an old boys club, and we're going to change that. And they changed it. And for a number of decades now, diversity has been a key focus of the club. And so I'm thrilled to be associated with the Canadian Club and very happy to be here today.
Thanks very much, Nick, and a little ripple for you as well. Miss Levy, our only Olympian on the panel, please, you're next.
Thank you, Ivan, and good afternoon, everyone. Happy Black History Month. It's a pleasure to be here. I am, as Ivan indicated, a two-time Olympian for Canada in the sport of field hockey, a lawyer by training, and I would like to share a couple significant events that have shaped me and helped me find my voice and brought me to the leadership state that I am in today. The first one is the 1976 Olympics. I grew up in Scarborough in a predominantly white elementary school. In the mid-1970s, my family was one of 3 Black families in my elementary school. The 76 Olympics was inspirational for me to see people who looked like me doing outstanding things on the world stage. It was then that I decided I wanted to be an Olympian. I felt empowered. This was foundational as it made me realize the importance of role models. I didn't know it then, but can tell you now that this event fostered my recognition that personal responsibility as a female role model and a Black role model was important. Delivering newspapers from age 9 to 12 is my second significant event. I delivered the Scarborough Mirror, the Toronto Star, and the Globe and Mail. I was the kid who read the paper on a Saturday morning rather than watching cartoons. Yes, I was a nerdy kid. Reading the paper taught me about the world. A couple key global stories had a profound impact on my young self. The apartheid situation in then Rhodesia in South Africa, and the Bobby Sands story. Bobby Sands was an IRA hunger striker who died from starving himself in protests. As a child, I struggled to rationalize injustices in the world, even when I didn't fully understand the story. Reading in particular about injustices created a hunger for me to understand people's plights and to default on the side of compassion, even when it is difficult. The third significant event was the awareness of academic streaming. I went to a high school in the early 1980s. I went to a high school with one of the most ethnically diverse populations in Scarborough. I chose advanced courses. There were none or very few Black students in advanced courses. This shocked me. Many of my Black friends either went to community college or worked after high school. Most of my non-Black friends went to university. This didn't make sense. Fast forward to me co-founding a scholarship at York University and also sitting on the board of governors at York University for a number of years. These experiences have informed my recognition that I have a personal responsibility as a Black woman leader to do my part to advance my community. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Excellent. Well done. And yes, a lot of this, a lot of that. Ms. Lawal, take us home, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I, too, am really glad to be here. I think similar to Jennifer, I've got an American background, but if I go way back, I was born in Nigeria. I grew up in New York City. I am a lawyer by trade. I practiced law in the United States before I came to Canada. Came to Canada, it's almost 20 years now, which is pretty incredible when I think about it. And I practice law in Canada, both in law firms and in a corporate law department. And ironically, during COVID, took a new job. I am now EVP and Chief Legal Officer at CIBC. It is a job that I took on, thank you kindly. It is a job that I took on in October. And I want to thank the folks at CIBC who took me in warmly, because it's not an easy thing to start a new job during COVID. But the onboarding that I experienced and the way that everyone has reached out has really been great. I too, again, I'm really happy to be on this panel. I'm happy to be among this esteemed group.
Thank you, Kike. Thank you very much. Very appreciative of all the words that we had, a little bit of this and a lot of love. Let's get to it. You know, diversity, equity, inclusion, this isn't new. You know, we've been dealing with this and principles of this, and companies have been saying, yeah, we know it's good for the bottom line, it's good for innovation. But what we have found in the research is that since the 80s, the growth in diversity has pretty much stalled. Since the mid 80s, it hasn't happened. And so my question is, if we know it's good, the governments have said this is a priority, companies have said it's a priority, we're not seeing any movement. Why is it stalled? Why is it that you have to have 2 Black people in a finalist panel for them to have a chance to be hired? 1 won't happen. 2, it increases the odds. Let me kick this question to you, Nick. Why have we stalled, and what are we doing wrong? And how can we create change if we want to diversify the talent in the C-suite?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good question, a big question. So a few thoughts. So first, I think we're increasingly coming to realize and recognize that to solve a problem, first we have to acknowledge that it exists. So it was about April or May of last year when this intense and heightened attention on anti-Black racism was at its peak, and someone on a call said to me, it's like all of a sudden everyone is seeing the CN Tower for the first time, and I've been telling them for years and years and years that it's there, and all of a sudden everyone sees it, and now they want an explanation. And so I think what's happening now and what may have been missing in the past is the real attention to acknowledging that the problem of racism exists. So we need to acknowledge that it exists. We need to understand it, which requires, I think, a depth of listening and quantity of humility that has sometimes been lacking from the steps that we take. We need to do enough. We need to care enough to do something about it and then not let up until it's solved. The work needs to be led by people who know what they're doing. And so, I think we've no more scavenger hunts. Let's really focus on the real work and ensure that it's being led by people who know what they're doing. We need to invest heavily in solutions, and investment comes in many ways, including financial investment. And I think those with power need to be able to give some of it up and risk some reputational and relationship capital, go against the grain, speak up when it may be unpopular or uncomfortable to do so. I think we're learning a lot of lessons about the deep and sustained work that needs to be done in order to make progress.
That point about those with power need to give some of it up really resonates, because that's the threat that comes and makes people so defensive and resistant to this kind of change that's happening. Anybody? Sandra, I see you've unmuted. Do you want to have some comments on this as well?
Sure, thank you. And I agree wholeheartedly with Nick's comments. What I would add is that leveraging any diversity and inclusion mandate needs to be done by leadership. Leadership needs to own DEI initiatives, and they need to be accountable for it. If it's put anywhere else in an organization, it will fail because it won't have the teeth it requires. The next important element is measuring progress and success. You have to have very clear objectives. You want to know what your desired or future state is going to be. And they need to be realistic and practical. So the objectives need to be measured along the way, and you have to be okay with pivoting and and changing direction if it's not working. And the only way you're going to know that is by measuring the success of your initiative. There are a whole bunch of tactics. I won't name all of them, but training to build awareness, improving onboarding, mentorship, engagement in the organization in this space. One thing we can certainly do in Canada, in the Toronto area, is sign the Black North Pledge to show commitment to it.
Thank you, Sandra, and some key points there, right? That data that, measure what matters. And I think I've heard Dr. Jackson talk about this in our entrance, and you've talked about it. One of the things I'm always nervous of, and again, I put my researcher nerd hat as well on, is this training piece, because we know that mandatory training doesn't work. It creates resistors, and we've seen that. And so it's that fine line of how do you make the training accessible? Don't mandate it, because what happens is you get what I'll say the fork in the spoon drawer. Those people who work against the system. You can't tell me what to do. I'll show you what's going to happen. And so I'm always mindful of that. What do you say, Sandra, to that when we talk about mandatory training versus optional training? How do you move through that?
I agree with you. If you force people, they're not going to learn. You have to want to learn, and you have to want to be part of the conversation. I think the more awareness you build and the more engaged you get your employees in this space, the more they're going to want to accept training and be a part of it. And consult with your employees to make sure you're delivering what they need.
Amen. It's all about communication. Kike, did you have anything that you wanted to add on this topic?
Yeah, I think I'd probably just add that some of it is about expanding where we're looking. I think the pools might be narrow, intentionally or unintentionally. The understanding of what's relevant experience, I think, also could be expanded. I was thinking the other day about how the term grit has become really popular. And those grit doesn't appear on a resume, but you can read those things in. And if people broaden their understanding about what's relevant, I think that could help as well. If I look at someone's resume and I see that they've gone through something, they've fought through something, that actually tells me a lot about whether and how they can manage people, manage situations. And so maybe it's just a question of looking at things a little bit differently. Of course, there are going to be table stakes things like requisite education and experience and those sorts of things, but expanding the way we think might be one way to go about it.
Thank you. And I couldn't agree more. And expanding the way we look. I remember the first time I read about that unconscious bias that happens in our resume reading, how we look at it and how we, the racialized names don't get called back. I was shocked just by changing somebody's name from, and I'm making it up, whatever a strong Black name might be, Lakeisha Washington, you change it to, Sally Tripp, and all of a sudden they're 60% more likely to get a call back. And so you think about it, it's not that they're stalled. It's not that there's a shortage of Black talent. It's not that we can't get people to the pipeline. It's that there's some biases working against us. And I hear all the time, we have a shortage of Black talent. We have a shortage of Black talent. Who wants to speak to that? Does anybody want to say, hey, we don't have a shortage of Black talent? That's just not true. That's not what's going on here. Nick, I saw you unmute, then Sandra. All right, go ahead.
Sure thing. So it's a big question. It's a loaded question, and I think the very first thing that we need to acknowledge is that this country is rich with Black talent. I think if we change the Zoom settings for this meeting so that we could see the 1,000 or so people who've logged in, I think we'd be scrolling through page after page after page of Black talent. Our calendars this month and for the last year are filled with events celebrating Black excellence. We have the likes of Ron Fanfare and the Harry Jerome Awards and the Who's Who in Black Canada, who for decades have been celebrating Black excellence in the country. And so let me add a little bit of nuance that's informed by the work that I do. So I would say that there's more talent, Black talent out there than we realize, but less than we need in order to close the gap. Amen. And I qualify that by saying that there are too many C-suite, so the topic of this conversation is Black in the C-suite. So if we focus on that, there are too many C-suite ready Black leaders who are overlooked or passed over. And if an organization claims that they can't find talented Black leaders, it's probably that they don't have the right relationships, they're not looking in the right places, they're not taking the time to look, they're not making themselves attractive to people who have options, who have choices. I think there are a number of things that organizations need to do before they can come to the conclusion that they have exhausted the pool or that they can't find anyone. And then to my point about not enough to fill the gap, there are a lot of aspiring Black leaders who are not being provided the leadership development, the mentoring, and the sponsorship early enough in their career so that they can hit those key milestones and accumulate the experiences that we look for in a chief executive officer or in a chief legal officer or in a chief human resources officer. So we need to be doing way more to invest in the pipeline, to invest in people's careers. And you can continue taking that further back and looking at universities and high schools and elementary schools and healthcare and law enforcement, and we could go on. So yes, the talent is there. And yes, we need to invest much more in that pipeline.
Thanks, Nick. Sandra, do you want anything to add?
Sure. What I would add here is, I think we need to take a step back. We need to create opportunity and access as early as elementary school. And we need to focus on potential. And we have to educate our educators to look at potential and to feed that. And as employers, we need to look at start building that pipeline in educational institutions through internship programs, scholarships. It really makes a difference if we create that opportunity and access at an early stage so that we can start to build and groom folks to head into leadership, into senior positions. I think that has been a big failing, and I think we really need to pay attention to that particular area.
Sandra, you've just hit it out of the park for me, and this is one of the ones I really struggle with, being in academia and running these programs. You know, just the other day, I was challenging myself to look at some scholarship opportunities, and a lot of these elite scholarships across Canada, they say, oh, you know, you must support 4 extracurricular activities, 4 leadership opportunities. Man, I had 2 jobs when I was in high school. I didn't have time for 4 extracurricular activities. My job was my co-curricular activity. And so therefore I am eliminated. And there's lots of people who are disproportionately impacted with their socioeconomic status. And that access and that pathway is eliminated because of us looking at scholarships in such an elite way. So thank you for bringing that point home.
And the only other thing I would add to your point, Ivan, is at the Canadian Olympic Committee, we have just made a commitment to paid internships. We didn't do it before. And 50% of our internships will be for BIPOC.
Love it. Thank you for, more than just words. Dr. Jackson, I'm coming to you, our esteemed president from Capital One. I got one for you. What role do cultural competency and cultural capital play in successfully building leadership credibility? Is this a two-way street, and how does it work when we speak about these things?
Could you say more when we say cultural competency?
So when I'm talking about cultural competency, I'm saying, hey, you know, what does it mean to be trained up and to be aware and to be inclusive in our language and our actions and our policies and our processes? Is it one way only? As a C-suite person, how are you making sure that falls its way and trickles its way through its system? And what role do people have in making sure, whether they're allies or not allies, being aware and included in that?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify for myself, but also for others. There's something that I fortunately, I don't know if it's because I was too lazy. many of us talk about compartmentalizing to work across different cultures, to work in corporate Canada, and conforming. And I believe that usually waters down what many underrepresented groups, people of color, Blacks, have to contribute. And so how do we think about that in institutions, in systems, in processes and practices that already exist, and frankly can be improved by people bringing their whole selves to work? One of the things was brought up before, just in talking about training, and it's not necessarily the training part, it's the bias that a lot of the assuming same cultures or one archetype is what the success model looks like. And so I'll answer a couple of questions before, because I think it's relevant in yours, which is it absolutely needs to be mandated, but I think it's less around sometimes when we call things diversity training versus just how do you, I consider bias training leadership training. How do people work best across differences? We're talking about race today in Blacks, but there are different background challenges that prevent other groups, especially socioeconomic, from succeeding. And so weaving things in that address biases that we all have. I'm sure I have some biases against Black people in some way, shape, or form too, for example, if we're going to be honest about everything. And so I think recognizing that there's nothing that can be truly merit-based. And so in every process or practice or procedure that we are putting in place things that strip that away. You mentioned the resume example. There are a lot of ways in recruiting that to deal with that. There's also things when we talk about performance management and talent management, and how do you both try to remove bias by raising awareness, but also celebrate differences and recognizing that perspective of me as a Black woman having a set of experiences that may be identical to a white gentleman, but are very much experienced different by me, will add a different point of problem solving that is, not just good for the team, but good for problem solving, good for business outcomes as we're thinking about, the places we serve and the places we work. So I don't know if it hits your cultural competencies specifically, but I do think when we're talking about trainings or frankly conversations that need to happen all the way at the top leadership levels and be mandated at that point, all the way down, I think that appreciation and empathy for those cultural differences as a need for the business and the need for the educational institution to be better and to have better outcomes, and requiring that is part of the overall success in improving representation, but also improving the outcomes that we want, which is ultimately everyone feeling that not just that they're hired or got into a particular institution, but that they belong there. Some of that is internal, but a lot of that has to do with who's around and the infrastructure that we set up for people and their acceptance and their success.
Yes, Dr. Jackson, let me just speak to just how important a couple of points that you just said so that your audience doesn't lose them, which is celebrate those differences, right? We tend to want to downplay them. And in an organization to make people, and you said matter and belong, that is how they thrive. That is how they feel engaged. That is how they get to the next level and become a high-performing organization. And so let us not just gloss over that. And for those of you who weren't paying attention, there were some nuggets of wisdom there. Kike, I saw you unmuted. Were you wanting to add to that conversation?
No, it's just, thinking a little bit about something that Nick said earlier, and it was around sponsorship. We hear that term thrown out a lot. And I just look at it as giving somebody an opportunity. Nick talked about making room. Just, some people need to give up some, and maybe it's not just giving up because it doesn't need to be a zero-sum kind of game, but it's making room. I know and have been the beneficiary of sponsorship where someone says, well, my name is mentioned in the right place, at the right table, at the right time. And I know that I've had some experiences that frankly allowed me to bank confidence and experience, get some battle scars, the sorts of things that, as Jennifer was saying, put you in a position where you're able to serve. And I don't want us to lose that. I don't want to lose the benefit. I don't want us to lose the importance of that. And when you say, I wouldn't have had an opportunity because I was working at the time. But if someone gave you the opportunity and allowed you to show what you could do, it would make all of the difference. And it's that experience that then allows someone to be in a better position to do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So I want to add that. And again, I've been a beneficiary of it. I really have. And I always want to pay it forward. And if people did that a little bit more, it doesn't often take a lot to say, drop a name, give a nod of encouragement, do the sorts of things that elevate people and remind them about the confidence that they have.
Go ahead, Dr. Jackson. I see you there.
You drummed something, and then something earlier that Sandra said, and then your story about working. There were two things that I think helped me tremendously get to where I am. One was a program toward the end of high school that was aimed at getting underrepresented minorities interested in engineering, math, and science as majors, so that you can interested, and then you would major in college. And I absolutely believe the fact that I studied engineering helped me get where I am today. The program was free, and it included benefits. It was at a college, and so you paid for your room and your food, and gave a travel stipend because my parents were like, you either work this summer or you find something that doesn't cost any money. That was the options that I had. And so this program afforded that. And so it's to the point of, even very early on, opportunities that help uplift and identify very early on. Because I didn't know any engineers in my community. There was no family, friends in my community. And so I didn't know what that was. I didn't know you could have a job and out of undergrad potentially get paid that much. And so that was something that was really pivotal. And the second was, although I was only at Xerox for a few short years, it was when Ursula Burns, a Black woman, was at the helm as CEO. And I had always been very ambitious and had roles, did well in school, and I always thought, believed I could be a CEO. But working there, and actually that power role model that Sandra mentioned, and seeing it, that's where I switched, and I knew that I could be a CEO. And so that role model power, and that it wasn't just when I was young. I had been working for over a decade when I had that switch in me. And so I do think that's important, because it's a virtuous cycle. If you can just get some critical masses and some people in some key positions, it influences more than we know the next level and the next level and the next level. And it's a virtuous cycle like that.
If we were in the physical stage right now, Dr. Jackson, you'd be seeing me standing up and giving you the standing ovation. But since I have track pants on right now, I can't do that. So I don't want to throw that off, but thank you for those words. It reminds me of what a friend of mine said: nobody does anything alone. I was plucked from Iowa by Sheldon Levy and the president at Ryerson and the provost, Alan Shepard, who's now the president at Western. And they didn't just make sure that I had the job. What they did was make sure I could not fail. And that is so critical. It's more than just saying we've hired somebody for diversity. We've endorsed them. To your point, KK, that we've sponsored them, and we are now imbuing them with the tools they need to be successful. Here's a question that's come from the audience. Do the same barriers that existed for you when you began your career still exist today? Or are they lesser, more, or different? I'm going to throw that out to the panel and see who wants to jump in on that and riff off each other.
I think there are some of the same. I think there's new awareness of it, of many of them. I think there is more of a willingness to speak about it. I don't know, I probably like a lot of the people on this panel, I grew up being told, yeah, work twice as hard, that's just how it is. And I also grew up, as I mentioned, I grew up in a Nigerian household. And so whatever you thought work harder meant, or work twice, take that to the next level in a Nigerian household. Then I add on top of that my lawyer DNA. And that's, I'll say it tends toward perfection. I like to say excellence, but it tends toward excellence and perfection. And I think those things also affect how you engage in the world. I think those things probably would not have changed over time, but your awareness of them has changed over time.
Mm-hmm. Amen. Anybody else want to jump in on that one? Okay. It's been suggested that successful Black leaders often wrestle with the twin challenge of no margin for error and being selected as the diversity hire, right? I've experienced this. I was a designated hire. I know many of you may have read my piece in the Globe. There were some challenges there, and I ended up leaving that environment to go someplace else. When you're recognized and seen as a diversity hire, and there's no room for error, but you're also being pushed to say, you better innovate, you better fail fast. This is the culture that we're looking for. It's hard to navigate this. What do you say to the aspiring people who are either in the C-suite or are working to try and make a mark and a legacy for themselves so they can get to the C-suite? How do they balance this? How do they navigate this? Who wants to hit this one? Nick? Or Dr. Jackson, I saw you twitch, so go ahead.
Start. I can talk after. Go ahead, Nick.
All right.
So I'll start. I'll open the door, and then Dr. Jackson, please do come in. I think it's a real issue, and I think it's worth calling out. This notion of failing fast and the emphasis that we're placing increasingly on vulnerability. Leaders should be vulnerable. Modern leadership needs to have a good dose of vulnerability. I think those are important. They're valuable. I think a lot of Black leaders who do believe that they have to work twice as hard and that there is no margin for error really wrestle with that contradiction. As recently as the person asking the question asked about whether barriers, whether things have changed. As recently as 3 months ago, I had a client remind me that because I'm Black, I'm probably going to be judged more harshly, and so I'd better bring my A game at every point along the way. And so to hear that reminder at 49 years old, when you've done all of the things that you've done and fought all the battles that you have to try and establish yourself, it gives you pause. It gives you pause. So I think a lot of this, gives people pause. And so yes, we continue to work as hard as we can. We continue to be careful about where we fail, where we allow ourselves to fail, where we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. I think there are times to have your shield up and times that you need to lower your shield and let your support system in and replenish your energy. And so maybe opening the door on this question is is to say, yes, this problem exists, it's real.
Dr. Jackson.
Yeah, I feel this, and it's probably linked to the barriers so that the person asked that question, because I think this is a barrier that remains. The way it shows up for me a lot is being underestimated or not given the benefit of the doubt with the same credentials, the same experiences, the same roles. And what that means is sometimes less leeway when there are mistakes, but more just a, never wanting to give, the reason I work twice as hard is never wanting to give the confirmation bias that, sure, like you really weren't going to be, as good or things like that. I do think that there is a part of it, for Nick's point, of being thoughtful about where, absolutely there are times and places that require some extra preparation, recognizing where I may be viewed and ensuring there's no way I'm going to give, ammunition, if you will. That said, especially as a leader, I do fully own and think it's important to own the mistakes that I've made. And I think that's how, in terms of, to use Nick's language, this, being a vulnerable leader, that, I'm not perfect, no one is, owning those mistakes, but I think those can coexist with recognition of how people may see me, and not having that override too much what I do and how I show up, other than, believing to work twice as hard. But what I don't do is question that I belong, and I don't question or underestimate myself. I think that's where sometimes, speaking to those maybe Black, this is women and stuff from the other underrepresented groups, not to question yourself and your abilities just because other people do. I think that's been the biggest thing that has helped from when I was younger and earlier in my career and in school, having those doubts creep in, because that actually impacted me and my performance. When I let that stuff go, I can't help what people think, but I can help what I deliver and how I show up and how I feel. And so that's what I would just do to encourage people who may be dealing with this. It is a barrier. It's why things like training and bias and awareness is more important for everyone to recognize when they're doing that of others. But that's a hard, tough nut to crack. And so a lot of how we go forward against some of that is equally important, not just to our success, but also to our inner peace and happiness, if you will.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Sandra, or Kike, you wanted to add?
I was just going to jump in to say that I think there were those who referred to me as a diversity hire. It's not something that I welcome, because it makes me maybe one, maybe two-dimensional.
Yeah.
If you think knowing that seeing that I'm Black, seeing that I'm a woman, if you think that is all there is to know about me, oh, you got it wrong. And you devalued me actually as a person to say, you are these two things. CIBC happily did not do that in my announcement. They painted a picture of me. They said, she's got this, what her educational background is. She's got some cross-border experience. She's got some experience in highly structured environments and in some more entrepreneurial environments. People will immediately know from my name, I've got a connection to my culture that cannot be denied. In some conversations, my name is a conversation starter. In some, it's a hurdle. People will obviously there are no trick letters. It's just as you see it. And I always try to be patient with the pronunciation. And then I think of my dad say, no, there's a more precise pronunciation, but this is okay. But all of these things, as I think, if you call somebody a diversity hire, then it means you've reduced them. You don't have a conversation about all of the things that they bring to the table. You don't start to look at how they're going to contribute to the conversation. And I I think, again, that devalues the person. It means that the organization has only looked at you as bringing this, and they will not, they'll miss the things like, oh, maybe the fact that I've practiced on both sides of the border means I bring something different. Maybe the fact that I grew up in an immigrant household means I bring something different. And I also just want to touch for a moment on labels. There's a Supreme Court Justice, Sonia Sotomayor, and she speaks a lot about diversity issues. And she spoke one time and she mentioned that Antonin Scalia, he was credited with being incisive and questioning, and she was called aggressive. These are the sorts of things, I think, again, that devalue the person and make someone muted or think they need to be muted, and the organization as a whole is the entity that loses.
Thank you for that. Sandra, I've got one from you for the audience. Are there moments, and then anybody who else wants to take this one, are there moments in your career that you felt you had to tone down your Blackness to move forward? How do you help other Black people bring out their full identity to work? And there's lots in the literature about this. Sandra, do you want to start the conversation on this answer?
100% have felt it. I would be lying if I said otherwise. I have worked in a number of global companies and national companies where I'm the only woman and I'm the only person of color at the senior level. And you have to find a diplomatic way to educate and to create awareness and to build relationships. And fortunately, it was a strength. And I don't know if it's my sport background that allowed me to get along well with mostly men. But I learned how to have conversations that allowed them to listen and to learn. Wasn't always perfect. And there were times where, we talked about names earlier. I would show up to an interview, usually in law, having a very Jewish name. And the first thing is, oh, you're not the Levy I expected. And that tells a story of how it's going to go. And then I have to find a way to pivot from that start of a conversation and recover. So it's a delicate balance. It's a bit of a dance. And as I found my voice and as I evolved as a leader, I think I became better at it. And I built confidence. I liked Jennifer's words earlier about I get to choose what I deliver, even when I don't feel the confidence. And it was important to start to bring my authentic self to a boardroom or to a situation. And the more confident I became, the better I got at it. And I think that that allows you to morph a little bit into the real person that you are, rather than pleasing people with what they want you to be.
Thank you, Sandra. Folks, we're down to the last 2 minutes of this panel, and it's time has flown by, and so we are in the zone. But let me ask you one last question, and if you could wrap it up in 30 seconds each, which is, what's one nugget of advice you want people to leave here with? If you saved your gem for last, it's like, here's the thing that's helped me thrive. Here's what will get you to the C-suite. If you don't mind, let's start with you, Kike. Take us through, and then we'll kick to you, Sandra and Nick, and then we'll close with you, Dr. Jackson. Your one nugget of wisdom.
Wow, no pressure with that one nugget. I think I would say find your circle of people. Those who will uplift you, those who will challenge you, those who let you get it out when you need to, those who will tell you the truth when they need to. Those people who will help you navigate things. And there's your inner circle, but then there's then there are other circles. There are people that I know I've been energized by. I don't talk to them often, but when I do, it makes the difference. And so have the network of people that you can rely on, different from a mentor and a sponsor and all of the things that you do for professional purposes, but what you do for yourself, how you keep yourself grounded.
Perfect. Sandra.
I would say find comfort in your discomfort and don't be afraid to step out on a skinny branch.
Amen. Amen. I like that. I'm going to put that in one of my tweets next. Nick.
So I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to borrow from Dr. Jackson and you do belong. And in fact, I want to address this comment to young people. I know my daughters have logged in today. To the two of you, to young people, you do belong. It's actually a very exciting time. I'm optimistic and know that there are a lot of people out here opening doors for you, holding those doors open, and we look forward to the breeze as you go racing by us and exceed everything that we've managed to accomplish.
Thanks, Nick. Dr. Jackson, take us home.
Yes. Be true to who you are, always. Be mindful and know your environment and when to modulate accordingly, per Nick's comments before. And I do have to double down on know you belong. In the face of other people's bias, of who they think you are, you know who you are and who you should be. Remind you that you've earned your seat at the table. And at the heart of it, we're all people trying to do the best we can. And so having that empathy toward everyone can help others have empathy toward you and to us.
Thank you. Panel members, thank you. Today, the Canadian Club made history. The first time we had an all racialized panel that graced this stage. I'm honored to be a part of it. Thank you. We have an obligation as leaders to pay it forward and to pay it backward. We are happy to help serve and reach out to any of us anytime you can. Scott, to you.
Thanks very much. I'm Scott Belton. I'm on the board of the Canadian Club of Toronto and a senior vice president at TD. And I also co-chair TD's efforts to address anti-Black racism. TD is incredibly proud to sponsor the Canadian Club and this really important and extraordinary event right here in Black History Month. Today's panelists clearly demonstrate why representation matters. I want to thank them for joining us today and sharing their perspectives. Work twice as hard. This is a theme heard today and from many Black leaders, and still people wonder if they got the job because they are Black. The reality is Black leaders are underrepresented in leadership as a direct result of systemic anti-Black racism that has and still pervasively exists in our society and institutions today. And for hundreds of years, Black leaders have done more than their fair share in trying to address these issues. But the truth is, it's not a problem they created. As we close today's event, but continue the conversation, my nugget is specifically for the majority of us who aren't Black. We hope leaders at TD and across Canada recognize that systemic racism is not a conceptual thing, but it's a specific thing, and that good intentions aren't enough. Setting targets isn't enough. Interrupting the system, the process, and the biases that prevent achieving equitable outcomes in our organizations is essential to this work. Once again, a monumental thanks to Sandra Levy, Dr. Jennifer Jackson, Kikelomo Lawal, and Nick Chambers, as well as our terrific moderator, Dr. Ivan Joseph, for your incredible perspectives. And to the viewers, thank you for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed today's event.